Welcome to We Are Soccer. Today I'm joined by Coach Brian Wiese, the Georgetown University men's head soccer coach. First off, welcome to We Are Soccer, Coach.
No, thanks for having me on, Craig. Great.
All right, listen, we're in the middle of the summer, so you're doing ID camps. There's a lot of other things that people don't know about that happen in the summer here. It's a busy time for programs, busy time for coaches. How's your summer been going?
Summer's been busy, right? Exactly as you say. I think if you're not in the college soccer world as a player or a coach, you may sort of ask the question, well, what happens when you're not in the fall season, right? A lot of people don't recognize how full time it is for these players and for the coaches in it. I mean, we we'll go from whenever school's in session, so like from January through for us in the semester system through beginning of May.
Mhm.
Every day that the guys are taking a class, they're playing soccer or they're working, and then as soon as they're finished with their finals, they all pop off to these summer leagues they play in immediately. Like they've already started. Like there's
Yeah.
no day we'll take a couple. It's like boom, I got to fly and we got to practice or a game immediately, and they're playing it. So our guys are finishing up that summer league now. We're what, almost 3 weeks, two to 3 weeks out from preseason starting. If they're lucky, they get a couple weeks before they ramp into our preseason, and then preseason and beginning of August is a billion miles an hour with all of our games. That runs 6 days a week until our season ends, which if you have a good year, you're hoping it's like this November, December window. And very much like a pro team, you kind of want the guys to like, listen, take 6 weeks off because we start up again in January. It's a full-time development cycle. And for us as coaches, in this summer window, we do it heavily for recruiting. So we'll be out and we'll watch kids play at various tournaments all over the country, and we're doing ID camps to identify kids there, and we're cranking along, preparing for preseason, getting session plans sort of lined up, et cetera, et cetera. So there's not a whole lot of downtime, but
I don't
at
think
least we
people
enjoy
know
it.
this. I don't think people know this. They think it's just in the fall you're coaching, doing a little practice and some games, and maybe in the spring some games. People don't understand that this is an absolute full-time, everyday job, and you're thinking about soccer 100% of the time and working into it, right? I mean,
It
it's bizarre.
it's well, and we fight a little bit of a stigma of, if you talk to people who are in the pro environment, they'll say college isn't a great place for you to go to develop to be a pro, and it's 100% false.
Right.
They Our spring, when we're out of season, is one of the best development times for an individual that there is. In the summers they're all playing, they play a ton. They're not sitting around hoping they're playing more soccer when they're in our environment. So yeah, it's busy. It's great.
It's always busy. And this summer specifically has been a little bit busier for you because the Hoya Nation team signed up to do the 7v7 soccer tournament. You know, you had Burnley there with JJ Watt and Pat McAfee's CONCACAF team. You had Borussia Dortmund. You had all these teams. You had the Hoosier Army team. The Air Force had a team. You guys were involved with it and you did really well. You advanced into the knockout rounds. How fun was that? Just that must have brought a ton of attention to you and the club and the university, right? Because I watched and I was thrilled. I was enthralled by it.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people did watch it, like recruits and kids, youth kids and alums, and it was pretty remarkable, right? In that regard, I thought it was great. The event itself has grown. Henry Tenbon, who's one of our alums, is one of the guys who's been really putting it on and organizing. He tried to get us in year one, and we didn't have our act together to do it. And we had some group of guys that played that hey, we got to do this for year two, and I was really impressed with the organization of it. I was really impressed with the festival nature of it. We got knocked out in the first knockout game, and we went to games. I went to games at least that night, and man, it was great fun, really entertaining. The crowds are huge, the weather's great, the fields are great. Like it's a really good advertisement for a version of the sport, I suppose, right? For our group, for me personally, I think we had about 20 guys that had played for me over my 20 years at Georgetown, or really almost 19, I guess, years at Georgetown. That it was just great for me to be around these guys again, and it's fun because these guys were all great players. We got all sorts of Big East Player of the Years, we're speckling through, and they're just old fellas now, right? But they're still really good, and they're trying to remember like their bodies can do this or they can't do that. But we had a blast. We had a blast doing it, and it's a pretty impressive event, and I think it's something that's very much growing. You can see them going to multiple venues and
Yep.
the event getting more and more popular, and to be fair, maybe getting harder and harder to get into. They're
Yep.
trying to grow the women's side of it, which it's there's a lot there, but really really fun week for us.
It was fun to watch on the television. I wish I could have made it down, and we're hoping to have a team in there for year 3. We'll see if that happens, but it was fun. Anybody at the tournament that you shook hands with or bumped into that you were like, man, that was awesome? Anybody you wanted to meet while you were down there?
Well, there's a lot of guys. I mean, the Aguero, by the way, he trained at Georgetown for a little bit back in 2015. He wouldn't have remembered me, I don't think. Didn't see him, watched him, but didn't meet. I mean, it is funny who you bump into. It actually is pretty good. There's a lot of old people that maybe wouldn't be sort of famous per se that I've known over the years that I just literally haven't seen for 10 years,
Wow.
15 years. And you're like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And old Thomas Rongan, I ran up
Oh,
against him, right? And which is fun. We coached against each other that last group game, and all the Indiana guys, right? All the college guys from the Air Force guys were. It was fantastic, right? So, but it is amazing. There's a lot of World Cup players, right? That are, Sasha Kleshin, who was at, up like the Big East, right? He's an old Big East Seton Hall guy. You're out there running around the World Cup, but they're super competitive, having a great time doing it, and I don't know, it's a pretty fun walk down sort of the old soccer the channels of like, well, who did you see when? And this guy's 10 years out, this guy's 5 years out. These guys are still kind of playing.
Yeah.
Here they are, right? So it's a pretty cool event that way.
Absolutely is. All right. So you mentioned it. Preseason's coming up here, a couple of weeks away from it. You're looking forward to getting the team back together, getting them back in session. I don't know if they still do it, but when I was at university and we played soccer, it was 2-a-days, and those were grueling for the first, 7 to 10 days. Do you still do 2-a-days? You're looking forward to getting the group back in and getting them fit?
Yeah, it is a different environment these days, right? Because you don't have a lot of time as a coach. You sit here and you say, well, we have about 2.5 weeks before your games kind of begin in earnest. It's super quick. And so the guys do a really good job, and they understand how important it is to come in fit, because you can't sort of ramp up in that short a period of time. You have to really come in sort of with all guns blazing from a fitness and sharpness point of view. And we do 2 days to a certain extent for maybe a week.
Okay.
But the 2 days are very different than probably what you're thinking, and certainly what I lived, which was you show up, you play a full session, you then, 6 hours later, you show up, you do it again, and it's another full session, and then by the third day, you wonder how your body can function, right? And our 2 days are much more controlled. But you have sports science. I mean, we have a catapult system. We have Sean Foster, who's our sports performance coach, who does an incredible job. He's telling me less of this, more of that, harder here, easier there. This guy needs more of this. And so you get all that stuff, and it's very thoughtful and considered. And then the 2-a-day for us will be a harder session in the morning and a very light something in the afternoon, right? Whether it's tactical walkthroughs or set piece walkthrough or something, but it's like be really ginger on the body to
Yep.
to make sure that you're not hurting anybody in this really compressed preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely different from when I was there 25 years ago now. Yeah, 2 days were grueling, but like you just said, you got sports science, you got everything. It's more technical now. The sport has changed so much in the past couple of years. Georgetown seems like they are on the forefront of really heading in the right direction of, like you just said, having a sports science person there, telling the coach, and the coach actually listening to the sports science folks, back off of this, do a little bit of this, a little bit more of that. And it's phenomenal how much the game's changed. Is that something that you like, or do you prefer the old school type thing? Do you prefer knowing a little bit more and having a little bit more science involved and how the game has changed?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have good people. Like, so it's what it's really meant is like my close support staff it's just grown a little bit. I think if you get too many people, it's, you start feeling like a football coach managing, all of these legions of people, and this, you start losing touch with this, that, and the other, and you start getting too much information. And I think you can overcomplicate what should be a simple game. But having said that, you do have, so for I'll have myself and three assistant coaches, and the four of us are sort of doing the soccer operations, how we operate, and you sort of, manage the outside of the field stuff too. But it's really like, what's the next session? What's the opponent? How do we think tactically of this? Um, and then, we have our athletic trainer, Jess Fornieri, whose job is to get people healthy, right? Like somebody picks up an injury. Well, how does she manage getting them back? And then Sean Foster's our sports performance coach. And those two guys have sort of this interesting kind of overlap in what they do, right? Sean's get fitness, strength. How do we optimize performance and prevent injury in some ways, and then the athletic training position is like, well, how do we manage injury, or how do we prehab to prevent some of that stuff? And there's that sort of necessary sort of partnership that they have to do it. But that's really the close support staff that we have, and it's gotten much more detailed with this is how you should think about how a week should feel over the run of a session. This is how you should think about what the day before a game should feel like. This is this load on this player, and the players, you can get really caught up in it in some ways, but I think having this basic sort of understanding with good people, who I'm really lucky to have good people who understand. We're, I think, one of the few programs in college soccer that has a full-time sports performance coach that is just for men's soccer. They travel with us. They show up they're warming our team up. They're watching training. We'll go into the weight room. They understand exactly what we've been doing and understand exactly where we are on the flow of the season. He'll taper the entire fall to peak for the Big East tournament.
Wow.
So we're should be peaking, and he explains it all to the players so they understand what's going on. It's pretty great, and I think the nuances of that stuff are just a relationship, right? So if I have a sports performance coach that says you have to do this, and and I look at him and say, "What are you talking about? This is not how we operate," right? Then it breaks down really quick, and we don't listen to each other. But I think we have people that understand like what we're trying to accomplish on the soccer field, and I also understand what they're trying to accomplish from their arenas, and we work really well together on that. So like at the end of a session, if we're playing 11v11 on a half field, I usually don't go big. I go half field, two-thirds, three-quarters fields max for training.
Yep.
He'll look at it, and he might suggest maybe three-quarters field today because we need these kinds of runs where the week, or maybe a little smaller today's good. But he'll also say, man, can you go longer in that period, right? Can you give us another 5 minutes of that? Or how much do you want to accomplish your coach? Because like if you can tighten it up a little bit, that would probably be better for where they are. And we just work really well with our sort of understanding where the soccer side of it, so to speak, the tactical side of it, what we're trying to get done, what we need to, and then where do we handle things physically. And it's a different world than it was even 5 years ago. It's not even the same kind of conversation.
It's absolutely crazy, but that's the way the sport has gone, and I love it, actually. Speaking of changes that are happening, there are new substitution rules coming for college soccer this year. Good, bad? How do you feel about those rules that are coming in?
Yeah, fundamentally good. I've been a proponent of no reentry either half. I don't. There's people who are very hard line with like, hey, we need to be exactly lined up with the international game with no reentries and this and clock being held on the field. And there are differences and nuances to how we run our game. But it's a step in the right direction in a lot of ways. So no reentry the second half makes us have to think completely different about a match.
Yep.
And in a healthy way, I think. There's 6 moments now you can sub as well, and I actually was against that because I think on the surface it's not a bad thing, but the design of how a college season operates, if we have no reentries, so here are the scenarios of how a game flows. Let's say you're in a tight game and you're going through your moments. You've used all your moments and you don't have the ability to sub anymore, even with no reentry.
Yeah.
And you knock in 2-3 goals in a 5-minute window midway through the second half, and you just don't, right? You have to continue to play players that maybe could use a rest, right? And give them a break to be blunt, would be really healthy for them at that time. But you have to keep them on for that reason, or you can't give a kid an opportunity to play. He maybe wouldn't have gotten the opportunity, but the game is now set up to let a freshman get in, and they weren't going to play otherwise. So those opportunities, I think, if you just remove the moments,
Yeah,
then that makes it nice. But it's there's a lot that are going the right direction. I actually kind of miss the golden goal in overtime, and having no overtime's got some benefit, but
yeah,
I actually, whenever I watch these Euros, not the Copa America, there's no overtime, right? They go right to
right.
PK.
It's right to PKs.
But the Euros, when you watch it, the 30 minutes of time for me, it's good, but man, the excitement of a golden goal in college was great. We got rid of it, which I think is a sad thing because it really was exciting. Any mistake and you play, and at the end of the day, anything that gets you away from a penalty kick shootout is a good thing, right?
Agreed.
So a golden goal, you're done. Unfortunately, a goal here, then an equalizer there, suddenly you're back into penalty kicks. So,
Exactly.
and we can have the debate all day that
Yeah,
you like, but I do think the rules are going in the right direction. We have to think about it differently for sure,
sure.
and how we manage our team, how we manage, player management, tactically very different. We have to have an understanding of what our opponents are thinking of doing. Like, what do they typically like to do with
Yep.
maybe an impact player? Does he play for 90? Does he come off? Does he start off the halftime and come on to finish the game, or does he tend
That's a
to
great
dominate the
point.
game? How are you? Do you like how that lines up with what you kind of do and that stuff? So there's some little challenges and changes that you have to kind of be aware of, and I think it's good.
I've never dug that far deep into the into looking at scouting the other team and how they use the moments and how they use players at this level with no reentry. So that is that's a great point you make. The Big East has made a couple of changes. Akron is now in Big East. Do you see the Big East expanding at all? Do you see it growing anymore? Because as we've seen in football and some of the other sports, we'll say the more money generating sports, the conferences are just becoming mega conferences. Do you see that happening? Do you see that following in with soccer? And do you see the Big East essentially expanding more?
Yeah, well, how much time we got, right? Like this is a big conversation in general, college sport, right? With what's going on with all these lawsuits and the House settlement and NIL and paying players and the impact of football. To be honest, basketball is kind of going along for the ride, and they're a big player in it. But really, the decisions that are made around football that just affect the heck out of everyone. And there's a ton to be determined right now. So I think, I mean, the answer to your question on the Big East is no, I don't think so. I think we're in a really good place. I think the league's fantastic that we have 12 teams, which for me is the right number. It's a great number. It's really competitive. Groups adding Akron was one of the great things we did. It let us geographically divide into an East and a Midwest, and scheduling has become way more efficient.
Nice.
Akron's a team that's always a top 10, top 20 team, and competing to get to Final Fours. Great addition competitively for the league. Great facility. So that for me, I think we're in a really good spot. I don't know the need to do that's there. I think again, in response to football, I do feel that the perpetual sort of shuffling of the deck of who's playing where and why, it's very predictable to me, at least, that football is going to do its own thing. And when schools like Stanford and UCLA and are moving over into the ACC, and New Washington is moving to the Big Ten, you're sort of wondering, well, what's going on here, right? And for football, maybe that makes sense. They travel and the money's there to sort of do it. But man, when you lump in all of the other sports to do the same thing, it sounds fine on the surface, but I think what everyone at these schools will get to within a year or two max is, what the heck are we doing with soccer? What the heck are we doing with volleyball? Why is our softball team doing that trip?
Right.
And my guess is these teams, these conferences, these mega conferences, which Big East is not one of, which is, we're very happy. We're sort of watching everybody else do all this stuff. We're like, well, boy, that's fun. Okay, you got this new thing. You got to travel there. You got to do this, and we're sort of happy with where we are. So thank you very much. But these the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, there's very hit or miss representation of men's soccer in those conferences, right? So there's not much SEC. There's really, the Big 12 isn't really a thing for men's soccer. The Pac-12 is like halvesies.
Mhm.
But men's soccer, along with everyone else, at some point, those, however many there are, 50, 60 football schools that are creating the sort of jet wash of impact with the money that's coming in that they have to manage and why they're going to, get these mega contracts. They're eventually going to say, listen, all of you other sports, just go into a confederation, just be men's soccer and do what makes sense within those 60. Geographically reorganize yourselves. So you might have, softball teams that are traditionally SEC and Big 12 and Big 10 congeal across those borders just to be geographically sensible. And
Yeah.
For a ton of reasons. One is like, well, there's no reason to, that the travel needed for those schools. If you just be let's save some money, because even for those schools, the finances are going to become really tricky with how much money's got to go to athletes. They won't have kind of the dollars everyone's seeing. It's going to disappear really fast for our type of sports. And so I think it's going to become very much a regionalized kind of configuration again. And it'll be interesting to see what they call themselves. But I think you'll see the old school Pac-10 schools will sort of somehow start playing each other again.
Together.
Right?
Yeah,
Old
that's a
school
great
Big
thought.
Ten. They're
Yeah.
all going to start playing each other again, however they want to. But it'll be affiliated by sport. It will be kind of delegated across what makes sense for men's soccer, and now what makes sense for baseball, what makes sense for women's soccer, and they'll sort of independently run themselves.
That's a great thought. I'd never actually put that together, but you're right. It may eventually come back together for, we'll call it the smaller sports of volleyball, baseball, soccer, those ones that aren't generating the millions and millions of dollars like football. Coach, a lot of youth players watch us, a lot of high school players. I got to ask you one piece of advice. If there's players out there who are looking to play at the next level, play at that college level, if they're being recruited or they're hoping to be recruited, what piece of advice would you give to a player, whether it be social media, whether it be on the field, whatever it is? What's something you'd like to pass along to those kids and have them know?
Again, how much time we got, right? So it's a tough world. You sit at these events. We're going to end up pulling in 6 to 8 kids on any given year, right? And we'll watch hundreds or thousands of kids, really, that you're trying to really pare down to like who are the right ones and why. I think you got to have an understanding that you don't control a ton, right? And you just have to come to grips with that, right? I don't control what Georgetown needs positionally. I don't control what that coach likes. They might. It's a very subjective thing when you sit down and watch a player. Do you like this guy? Do you not? Why or why not? And there's universal players that people think are really good players, but why does someone prefer Cristiano Ronaldo over Messi? Right? You can't argue that they're both great players, but people will prefer one over the other for a reason that's totally subjective. So same thing happens on our level where we're looking at players and the recruiting process is one that is very hard to nail down. That's why it's frustrating. There's no real like this is how you do this. And what I would recommend and is understand where you are within the parameters of the timing, right? These young guys who are freshmen and sophomores, just recognize you have to send emails out to coaches and understand that you're not going to get a response and be okay with that. NCAA rules prohibit that. You're too young in our eyes anyway, but you'll get on the radar and maybe we'll see you at an event, and then the familiarity is really what matters. And the more we see a player, the happier we are with what they can be. And so, being lucky with who sees you enough to feel good about you, like you don't control that, whether they sit at your field or not. You don't control that. You don't control whether you play well or not. You don't control what game they happen to see you and what moments they happen to see. So it's like you just got to be you. You just got to play, right? And the coaches will either take a shine to who you are, or they're going to go a different direction, and you don't control that. And so, when you talk about the juniors, the rising, these guys who are now current juniors after June 15th, where we're able to now email and call and text back and forth. It's a little bit more open. It's still a 12 to 18, potentially even 24-month recruiting process. That timeline for some kids, it happens really quick. And for other kids, they got to wait for another 12 months. And that's a long time for a player to try to figure out where they're going. But the same thing applies. You just have to continue to contact the schools you're interested in, even if you don't hear anything. Keep sending them an email saying, "This is where I'm playing. This is where I'm playing." Get to the camps to have them see you. Make sure that they know that you're playing at an event, and hope they see you. And if you don't hear back, don't worry. Just keep, I say, keep feeding the meter. Keep
Yep.
feeding the meter. Don't worry about the response, because the number of times that we'll either just not see a kid at an event, or we'll see them and think maybe not, or we'll see them and think, boy, he's pretty good, but I don't think we need that position.
Yep.
And then 6 months later, we see that kid again. It's like, oh, we actually do need that position now for a billion reasons. Or that kid showed really well there in that game, or that kid's gotten a lot better. It's just an evolving
Yep.
process. And as you go through it, you just have to be okay with, and I just say, listen, you gotta continue to go and go and go to tell the school you're playing at this place, to tell the coach you're playing, hey, have you seen me did it? And when you don't get replies, just keep going until that coach says, hey, we're done recruiting. Best of luck to you. We don't have room. Until you hear that, you just keep pumping that you just keep pumping it, and you don't know what happens. And listen, at the end of the day, you have to be good enough.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be good enough, but that's not enough. You have to be lucky too,
Yep.
right? And as long as you can kind of be okay with that horrible truth and reality, you'll navigate it. You'll be all right, So
Sounds like the name of the game is persistence for
persistence, and be good and work and
Yep.
handle yourself right and be you. And
Yep.
man, I mean, we pay attention to a ton of stuff, like the number of kids that we see that we think are good, but then boy, they didn't handle the referee well there, they didn't handle a teammate well there, or their parents are a little crazy on the sideline. Maybe we got to be careful of that. Or you pay attention to all of it, and they got to recognize that, right? They got to recognize that. So I think, you know, um, eh, persistence is right. Persistence is right. And then, if you get lucky, all right, good, right? But everybody finds their way. Everybody on any roster has gone through this process one way or the other, and it's stressful. That's there's no you're not going to get around that. It's stressful, even for the really high end players. It's stressful. They have to make decisions,
Yep.
and they're under pressure.
Yep.
And then for the guys who are sort of the diamonds that no one's seen yet, man, no one's seeing me. Now I'm not hearing anything. That's stressful, right? We're like, what do I do? I feel a little drift. What happens, right? And then you got the whole spectrum in between. So just for all those young guys out there, just hang in there, keep playing soccer, and enjoy it.
There you go. I love it. Absolutely love it. Coach, August 22nd, your first game's coming up really quickly. Like you said, you got a couple of weeks with the boys. You're going to be back in preseason, then it's off, and it's like a shotgun, and it's go. We here at We Are Soccer wish you guys nothing but the best of luck. Hopefully preseason goes well. Everybody comes back fit, healthy, raring to go, and then you can make a run into the season there. So good luck to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We very much appreciate it. We'll have to do a check back in the middle of the season if we can find a couple of minutes here and there. I know how busy it is, but yeah, man, thank you so much for the advice and all the information you've given us today.
I love it, Craig. Anytime we could do a check in at some point. I need to talk to somebody when things get stressful for me, right? When the games are getting hard, I can talk to somebody about it. So that'd be good. I would welcome that opportunity.
The only advice I'm going to give you is probably switch to a 4-4-2 since I'm old school.
Hey, don't you're preaching to the choir. I love that. That's a good one.
Yeah, love it. Love it. All right, Coach, thank you again. Appreciate it. We'll do a check back in soon.
Sounds good, Craig. Thanks for having me.
You too. Bye.